Welcome to Umbraea, where the dead whisper and forgotten truth still breathe. Bask in the dark, my midnight minds, but never be blind to the truth. Elisa Lam, Lam Ho Yi, was 21, a student from Vancouver, observant, thoughtful, traveling alone along the California coast in January 2013. She documented pieces of herself online on a Tumblr blog called Nouvelle Nouveau. Her writing read like an open notebook, reflections on time slipping away, on reinvention, on feeling haunted by a life she was still building. At the top, she quoted, "You're always haunted by the idea you're wasting your life." She lived with bipolar disorder, periods of heaviness, periods of restlessness. She wrote about it sometimes, carefully, not as spectacle, but as experience. Her family kept much of her medical history private. What they did share was simple. She called home every day. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't ceremonial. It was routine. A small thread tying distance to familiarity. On January 26th, 2013, Elisa arrived in Los Angeles by train. She checked into the Cecil Hotel, operating in part then as Stay on Main, a budget-friendly stay in downtown Los Angeles. She began in a shared hostel-style room. She visited the last bookstore, walked the city, moved like any traveler mapping something new. Within days, hotel staff relocated her to a private room. There were reports from roommates that her behavior had been unusual. No details publicly confirmed. Just a change of room. On January 31st, the calls home stopped. No one could have known that the final images of Elisa Lam would soon be replayed millions of times. Her parents waited. The daily call didn't come. On February 1st, they reached out to the Los Angeles Police Department. A missing person report was filed. Elisa's belongings, wallet, identification, laptop, remained untouched in her room. The LAPD began searching the Cecil. Hallways, rooms, common areas. Police dogs were brought in, sweeping the building. Even the rooftop. No trace, no scent picked up, no sign she had left the premises. Hotel staff were questioned. Guests were asked if they'd seen anything unusual. Nothing concrete emerged. The days stretched. Her family flew from Vancouver to Los Angeles, joining the effort, holding on to hope that she was still somewhere else. February 6th, the LAPD held a press conference. Details were shared publicly. A description circulated. Still silence. No forced entry into her room. No evidence of a struggle. The rooftop doors, locked, alarmed, accessible only to staff. Searches there turned up empty. 3 weeks passed, heavy, unanswered. And then, on February 13th, the internet saw something. February 13th, the LAPD released a surveillance clip recorded in the early morning hours of January 31st, in the hope that someone might recognize Elisa Lam or remember seeing her. The footage is just over 4 minutes long. Silent, grainy, time-stamped. She enters the elevator, alone. She presses several buttons, one after another, and then more. Nearly every floor. She waits. The doors stay open. Steps partially out, then back in. She moves to the rear left corner, pressing herself against the wall. Small. Still. Then her hands begin to move. Gestures repeated, difficult to interpret. The camera records the motion clearly. What it does not record is what she may have been reacting to beyond the elevator doors. She remains near the wall, waiting. The doors stay open. She steps out again, looks down the hallway, returns. More buttons. Her movements seem quicker now, less patterned, harder to follow. Her hands move again, briefly, in the open doorway. Then she steps out of frame. The elevator remains open, empty, for several seconds. Nothing. And then the doors finally close. She does not return. The footage unsettled people, not because it was violent, but because it was incomplete. The footage felt wrong, but what felt wrong isn't always what is. The footage spread quickly. Millions of views in days. Forums, Reddit, YouTube, lit up. People watched the same 4 minutes again and again. They paused, they zoomed, they debated every gesture. Some saw fear, someone hiding from a pursuer just outside of the frame. Others saw play, a game, or something stranger. Paranormal claims emerged. Ghosts of the Cecil's past. Supernatural forces. A building with a reputation already waiting to be used. Rumors tied the footage to serial killers, to hidden histories, to patterns pulled from coincidence and hindsight. The building itself fed the fire. Its reputation, decades of tragedy, violence, and despair, made the ordinary feel ominous. Threads grew longer. Connections were drawn. Stories layered onto stories. And in the comments, uncertainty often hardened into certainty. But the truth was far less cinematic. In the absence of answers, interpretation filled the space. A young woman's final recorded movements became spectacle. Questions became narratives. Narratives became certainty. February 19th. Guests at the Cecil began complaining. Low water pressure in showers and sinks. A strange taste. Discoloration. An unusual smell in the tap water. Maintenance staff investigated. A worker climbed to the roof, checked the large water tanks, opened one of the hatches. There, floating, was Elisa, nude in the water. The hotel notified police immediately. The scene was secured. Autopsy followed. Initial findings inconclusive. Months later, the final ruling. Accidental drowning. No trauma. No signs of foul play. No evidence of alcohol or illicit drugs. Bipolar disorder listed as a significant factor. Medication levels inconsistent. Guests had bathed, brushed their teeth, drunk from the taps for days. The water she was in had been used, yet no one knew. Rooftop access, locked and alarmed, restricted to staff. How she reached it, how she entered the tank, still remained unclear to the public record. A tragedy hidden above, while life continued below, until the water gave it away. Bipolar disorder is not rare. It brings cycles, deep lows that can feel endless, and periods of elevation that can bring racing thoughts, impulsivity, and disorientation. During manic episodes, behavior can become difficult to organize. Impulses quicken, judgment narrows. Actions that appear strange from the outside can feel urgent or even illogical in that moment. Elisa wrote openly about her struggles. The heaviness, the restlessness, the fear of wasting time. She was prescribed medication to help stabilize those cycles, but consistency can falter, especially during travel, stress, or disruption of routine. Medication inconsistency is not unusual in severe mood disorders, particularly when someone is already struggling. The elevator, the repeated buttons, the gestures, the movements in and out of the frame can be read in that context, not as a puzzle, not as a performance, but as a behavior that may reflect a mind under strain, trying to orient itself or regain control. The official ruling, accidental drowning, listed bipolar disorder as a significant contributing factor. And later, clinical commentary on the case often returned to the same possibility. We cannot see inside her thoughts. We cannot know what she believed she was reacting to in those final recorded moments. But the explanation rests on something human and fragile rather than something sinister. A young woman, alone, navigating illness in a place that offered little stability. Sometimes, the shadow is not a monster. It's simply the mind, under pressure, losing its way, which can be more frightening than any monster. The Cecil already carried a history. Long before Elisa Lam, the building had been tied to violence, deaths, and years of instability in and around downtown Los Angeles. Its location mattered. So did its reputation. By 2013, the hotel was already a name people recognized in true crime circles. That history did not explain what happened to Elisa, but it did shape how people interpreted it. It made the footage easier to mythologize, easier to read as haunting. Some places accumulate stories, and once they do, every new tragedy arrives already framed. After the footage spread, Elisa Lam became less visible as a person and more visible as an image. A clip, a reaction, a theory, a thumbnail. The internet did more than ask what happened. It began assigning meaning, frame by frame, gesture by gesture, pause by pause. And in that process, a young woman's final recorded moments were consumed far beyond their context. Her illness became speculation. Her distress became evidence for stories that she never told. Her movements became symbols in narratives built by strangers. But this is just what spectacle does. It flattens people into fragments. It rewards certainty even when certainty is borrowed. And it keeps circulating the image long after the person at the center has been reduced to a mystery. Elisa Lam was not a puzzle to solve for entertainment. She was a person and a tragedy. And the distance between those two things is where the internet is often least careful. What survives online is not always the truth. Sometimes, it's only the version repeated most often. Stories are often shaped by what we're shown, but not everything visible is true, and not everything true is visible. It asks for discernment in what we see, and attention in what we're willing to hear. You've been listening to